This video looks at a number of episodes of Star Trek, the original series or generation, Season 2, to identify historical references which can be used to determine the original history of the Star Trek universe. Special thanks to the transcripts which can be found on the Geschichte site. The episode order is the production order. In order to understand the development of the history or vision, we need to study the episodes in the order they were written. While I'm uncertain of the exact writing order, the production order is about as close as I can get. When Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek back in 1966, he had a vision which remained basically consistent over the following three years. The animated series and early movies retained this consistency in the most part. When The Next Generation was released in 1987, Gene's vision had changed, and the past needed to change in order to be consistent with this new vision. This video series will look at the original vision of Star Trek, starting with the earliest source material. Any historical fact from later sources which contradict the earlier references must be assumed to be in error. Minor changes in nomenclature can be excused. Catspaw is the first episode of the second season. It was the 30th episode produced. Its star date is 3018.2 and its original air date was 27th of October 1967. One thing I note about this image is that this dude sitting in the captain's seat seems to look so natural in that role. He'd be a perfect starship captain on another starship perhaps. Pyrrhus 7 is an uninhabited planet which has been previously surveyed but which now contains a new alien life form from an alternate dimension or parallel universe. Captain's log, Stargate 3018.2. Crewman Jackson is dead and there are no apparent physical causes. Mr. Scott and Mr. Sulu are still out of touch on the planet below, leaving Assistant Chief Engineer DeSalle in command of the Enterprise. I'm beaming down to the planet's surface to find my two missing crewmen and discovered what killed Jackson. Later, Spock states, mapping expeditions have charted this solar system before. There has never been any life forms on Pyrrhus 7. We are introduced to two totally alien life forms from another dimension or alternate universe. Spock states, eventually something totally alien in all respects. Kirk replies, agreed, totally alien. And I don't like hostile strangers showing such an acute interest in our galaxy, our world, Spock. Not at all like friendly visitors. We're going to have to stop them cold, but at the moment... Later, Corbold states, they're not your men anymore. They belong to Civil. I can no longer control them or her. She's irrational. The strains of adopting to your form, the insatiable desire for sensation experience, she's a great danger and it was not necessary. We could have entered your galaxy in peace. In conclusion, we only have a few interesting facts here. Pyrrhus 7 is an uninhabited planet that has a toxic atmosphere, which was previously surveyed. The only other bit of information is we discover an alternate universe in a totally alien life form. While the term alternate universe is not used, the term life form totally alien to our galaxy is used. Metamorphosis is the 9th episode of the second season. It was the 31st episode produced. Its star date is unknown and its original air date was 10th of November 1967. The shuttlecraft Galileo is also called NCC 1701/7. I'm unsure what the /7 means. Does this mean there are 7 shuttlecraft in the Enterprise? Highly unlikely, but you never know. Enterprise shuttlecraft NCC 1701/7 is being piloted by Kirk, assisted by Spock. Kirk states, Enterprise, this is Galileo. Come in, please. Come in. Enterprise, this is the Galileo. Come in, please. It's no good. We're not transmitting bones. We discover there is a war about to occur on Epsilon Canaris 3. This is probably not a Federation planet, and it's probably an alien planet. It could be in some loose alliance with the Federation, which is why the Federation is interested in it. Nancy states, I was sent to Epsilon Canaris 3 to prevent a war, Doctor. Thanks to the inefficiency of the medical branch of the Starfleet, I've been forced to leave before my job was done. The Gamma Canaris region contains a large number of asteroids, one of which is habitable and contains an alien and one human. I'm not quite sure why they keep on using the term asteroid. An asteroid could also be a planet, but it's normally too small to have an atmosphere. Anyway, perhaps at this early stage, people thought asteroids could be large enough to have an atmosphere. Let's just call it a planet. Spock states, now on course 98 Mark 12, heading directly towards Gamma Canaris region. After landing, Spock states, Gravity is similar to Earth, most unusual in view of its size. The bulk of the body seems to be iron and nickel, more than an asteroid, like a small planetoid, I should say, possibly a remnant of a planet breakup, totally suitable for human life. Cochrane does not know what the Federation is, which is another piece of evidence to indicate the Federation is a later organisation. As Cochrane disappears in 2017, he would have never known about the Federation or even the Earth-Romulan War. Cochrane states, well, it doesn't matter. I'm Cochrane. I've been marooned here who knows how long. If you only knew how good it is to see you. Even though Cochrane disappeared in 2117, he was familiar with Vulcans by sight. The Vulcans must be in regular contact with the Earth in 2117. As I've indicated, I think first contact probably occurred before 1999. Cochrane states, "You're a Vulcan, aren't you?" We are introduced to Zefran Cochrane of Alpha Centauri. Traditionally, when a name has a location in it, that location is the birth location. This is a Greek culture. Cochrane almost certainly was born on Alpha Centauri in 2030. This was probably 10 years after the planet's colonisation began. As the colony on Alpha Centauri was highly dependent on Earth, there would have been a major interest in speeding up faster than light speeds. In 2055, the SS Valiant may have had a speed of 20 times the speed of light, which would make the time to travel to Earth about 3 months. Zefran Cochrane dies 150 years ago, which would make it 2115. Okuda states it was 2117, which is what I will assume, as it does not really make much difference. Zefran Cochrane was 87 years old, which means he was born in 2027. Okuda states that this occurred in 2030, and I'll go with Okuda because it makes it more likely he could have been born on Alpha Centauri using this later date. Zefran Cochrane was about 35, which corresponds to his age when he developed warp drive. Okuda claims this occurred when he was 31. Spock holds Zefran Cochrane in high esteem, which seems to imply his discovery was something even the Vulcans were impressed with. This is the reason why I think the humans were the first to develop the warp drive, which must be remembered was not that much better than impulse drive when it was first developed. Cochrane states, "That's what I call it. As a matter of fact, Captain, I didn't crash here. I was brought here in my disabled ship. I was almost dead. The companion saved my life. I was an old man." Later, Kirk states, "Zefran Cochrane of Alpha Centauri, the discoverer of space warp." Cochrane replies, "That's right, Captain." McCoy speaks back, "But that's impossible. Zefran Cochrane died 150 years ago." Spock replies, "The name of Zefran Cochrane is revered throughout the known galaxy. Planets were named after him. Great universities, cities." Later, Cochrane states, "No, it's true. I was 87 years old when I came here." Spock replies, "True. His body was never found." Kirk then states, "Mr. Cochrane, you say you were brought here 150 years ago. You don't look over 35. Kirk states there are 1,000 planets. I'm assuming he means planets within the Federation. The number I've been working with is around about 850 inhabited planets, but there must be many more uninhabited planets which may have been explored or have bases on them. So 1,000 actually makes a reasonable amount of sense for this time. Kirk claims, "We're on 1,000 planets and spreading out. We cross fantastic distances and everything's alive, Cochrane. Life everywhere. We estimate there are millions of planets with intelligent life. We haven't begun to map them." Later, Cochrane states, "There is 1,000 planets out there, 1,000 races, and I'll show you everything to you, soon as I learn my way around again. Maybe I can make up a little for everything you've done for me." Cochrane was not familiar with the Universal Translator, which implies there was minimal contact with alien races when he disappeared. Cochrane asked, "What's the theory behind the device?" Kirk explains, "There are certain universal ideas and concepts common to all intelligent life. This device instantaneously compares the frequency of brainwave patterns, selects those ideas and concepts it recognises, and then provides the necessary grammar." Spock replies, "Then it translates its findings into English." In conclusion, we discovered 2 more planets, one which is an alien non-Federation planet and one which is an alien planet inhabited by a companion, and also Cochrane. The next most interesting information is to do with Zefran Cochrane of Alpha Centauri, who is probably born on Alpha Centauri in 2027 or 2030 and who disappeared when he was 87 in 2114 or 2117. He discovered the warp drive, which Okuda has stated in 2061, or which could also be 2065. As Companion has restored him to an age of 35, this may have been his age when he invented the warp drive. Okuda feels it's 31, and it does not make a difference. As it does not really make a difference, I'll go with Okuda's 31 years old. The other interesting thing is Zefran Cochrane is very familiar with Vulcans, but yet he's not aware of the Universal Translator. This implies the Vulcans were one of a very few, if any other, aliens in contact with Earth before 2117. Presumably the Vulcans learned English, considering that Spock does indicate that Universal Translator translates everything into English, thus Spock must be speaking and understanding English. Friday's Child is the 11th episode of the second season. It was the 32nd episode produced. Its stardate is 3497.2 and its original air date was 1st of December 1967. Capella 4 is a planet inhabited by humanoids, which has a rare mineral on it, which the Federation would like. It must be on the edge of Federation space. Captain's Log, stardate 3497.2. Planet Capella 4. The rare mineral topaline, vital to the life support systems of planetoid colonies, has been discovered in abundance here. Our mission, obtain a mining agreement. But we've discovered a Klingon agent has preceded us to the planet, a discovery which has cost the life of one of my crewmen. Later, McCoy states, they're quite large. 7 feet tall is not unusual. They're extremely fast and strong, Lieutenant. Uhuru turns on the monitor. Make no mistake, they can be highly dangerous. The Capella's basic weapon, the Klingat, at any distance up to 100 yards, they can make it almost as effective against a man as a phaser. Later, a Capella, Akara states, I am Tir Akar. I lead the 10 tribes of Capella. We learn a little bit more information about the Klingons, probably biased, but nonetheless information. The Empire is mainly made up of conquered planets, it seems. Krass states, we Klingons believe as you, the sick should die, only the strong should live. Kirk replies, the Earth Federation offers one other thing, Akar, our laws, and the highest of our laws states that your world is yours and will always remain yours. This differs us from the Klingons. Their empire is made up of conquered worlds. They take what they want by arms and force. We discover the SS Deidre is a freighter with a maximum speed of warp 2. It seems to be travelling in a convoy. Uhuru states, I have a signal clear now, Mr. Scott. It's a distress call from the SS Deidre. Scott replies, Deidre, that's a freighter. Voice informs, commanding, we are under heavy attack by Klingon vessels. 2 convoy ships are already damaged. We must have help. Enterprise acknowledge. Please acknowledge. Repeat. Sulu states, at best a freighter may travel warp 2. We also discover another freighter, the SS Caroline. It's another freighter, assumed max speed warp 2, and I'm assuming also in a convoy. It's interesting that freighters are travelling in convoys. Perhaps it's fairly common for them to be preyed upon. Uhuru, Mr. Scott, another distress call from the USS Carolina. In conclusion, we discover another alien-inhabited planet, which the Federation wants to sign a mining treaty with. We also discover, or at least the Federation thinks, the Klingon Empire is mainly made up of conquered planets. I assume only the alien planets are conquered, and there is a large number of Klingon colony planets, but it doesn't look like a particularly nice empire. Who Mourns For Adonais is the second episode of the second season. It was the 33rd episode produced. Its stardate is 3468.1, and its original air date was the 22nd of September 1967. The Enterprise explores a planet called Polis 5 and finds no intelligent life. Presumably it is habitable, just no intelligent life on it. Carolyn, here's the report on Polis 5, Captain. The entire system has been almost the same. A strange lack of intelligent life on the planets. It bugs the percentages. Kirk, bugs carry out the standard procedure on Pollux 4. It's interesting you should mention this. Clearly the Enterprise has discovered a bunch of planets which are quite habitable and which presumably in most cases would have intelligent life on it, but there is no intelligent life on it, which is interesting. That seems to imply any planet that is quite habitable does have some sort of intelligent life on it. So how does the colonies work? Anyway, another question for another time. The Enterprise explores another planet, this time Polis 5. Assumably it's in the same system as Polis 4, but it could also be a totally separate system. But for the moment we'll assume it's the same system. We've just got a couple of habitable planets floating around the same star. Spock, Pollux 4, Class M type planet, oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, sensors indicate no life forms, approximate age 4 billion years, judged no reason for contact, in all respect quite ordinary, Captain. Captain's log, stardate 3468.1. While approaching Pollux 4, a planet in the Beta Jeremina system, the Enterprise has been stopped in space by an unknown force of some kind. There is a mention to Starbase 12, which has been mentioned previously. Thus, the Enterprise must be in approximately the same space as the previous quote or reference to Starbase 12. Kirk, Lieutenant, relay our position and circumstances to Starbase 12 immediately. We're introduced to a race of beings who live forever. However, there are only very few. These beings visited Earth 5,000 years ago, which makes it 2736 BC. This race is humanoid, very humanoid, and presumably able to mate with humans, but possesses an organ which can channel energy. This seems to be their only main difference with humans. Presumably, only a few visited Earth, as we have no idea where the rest of the race are, or their home planet. This is possibly a group of the last of their race, and after they left Earth they went somewhere not of this world. Apollo on view screen. It has been 5,000 years. Have you learnt no patience in that time? McCoy. Simple humanoid, Captain. Caroline. Apollo, twin brother of Artemitus, son of the god Zeus and Leto, a mortal. He was the god of light and purity. He was skilled in the bow and lyre. Kirk. Apollo's no god, but he could have been taken for one, although once, say 5,000 years ago, a highly sophisticated group of space travellers landed on Earth around the Mediterranean. Apollo. They returned to the cosmos on the wings of the wind. Carolyn. You mean they died? Apollo. No, not as you understand it. We're immortal, we gods, but the Earth changed, your fathers changed. They turned away until we were only memories. A god cannot survive as a memory. We need love, admiration, worship, as you need food. Chekhov. Sir, some creature can generate and control energy with no harm to themselves. The electric eel on Earth, the giant dry worms of Anturnus IV, the fluffy. McCoy. Yes, except my estimation of his physical condition. In spite of Apollo's bag of tricks, he comes up essentially normal with just a few variations. However, there is an extra organ in his chest that I can't even make a guess about. Lieutenant Palamas, or Caroline, is a specialist in archaeology, anthropology, ancient civilizations. It seems the Enterprise spends a lot of time studying dead civilizations, which is what they may have been doing when they came across Apollo. Caroline, what am I doing down here, Doctor? McCoy, well, you're the A&A officer, aren't you? Archaeology and anthropology, ancient civilizations. Kirk, analysis. Lieutenant Palamas, what do you know about Apollo? In conclusion, we discover two more planets, Polis 4 and Polis 5. Polis 5 is an Earth-like planet, and it's possibly so was Polis 5. However, apart from Apollo, there are no intelligent races on it. Perhaps Apollo's peoples transformed a number of planets to live on until they disappeared, leaving good quality worlds with no one on them apart from Apollo. Starbase 12 is mentioned again. The Enterprise has a specialist in archaeology, anthropology, ancient civilizations. A race of travellers visited Earth 5,000 years ago, were taken for gods, and then left. Possibly, or perhaps they left 5,000 years ago, or perhaps they arrived 5,000 years ago, it's unclear. The race is humanoid and able to breed with humans, so perhaps they affected Earth's evolution somehow. They possess an organ, which I assume their children with Terran wives or whatever do not get, which allows them to channel energy. They are immortal and die out when Apollo disappears. Amok Time is the first season, or first episode of the second season. It was the 34th episode produced. Its stardate is 3372.7, and its original air date was 15th of September 1967. We are introduced to another planet, in this case Altair 6. We know they have excellent shore facilities. We also know that they were probably involved in some sort of military conflict. So maybe they're a member of the Federation, maybe they're not. They're probably on the borders. They're probably some sort of associated member, and the Federation is sending starships over there to sort of support peace efforts. Kirk. Then, since we've headed for Altair 6, and since the shore facilities there are excellent, later, Captain's Log, stardate 3372.7, on course, on schedule, bound for Altair 6 via Vulcan. First Officer Spock seems to be under stress. He has requested and been granted shore leave. Ship Surgeon McCoy has him under medical supervision. Later, Starfleet. To Captain, USS Enterprise from Starfleet Sector 9. Inauguration ceremonies, Altair 6 have been advanced 7 solar days. You are ordered to alter your flight plan to accommodate. By order of Cormac, Admiral, Starfleet Command, acknowledged. Cormac, on monitor, later states, Altair 6 is no ordinary matter. That area is just putting itself together after a long interplanetary conflict. The inaugurations will stabilise the entire Altair system. Our appearance there is a demonstration of friendship and strength, which will cause ripples clear to the Klingon Empire. We are told there are 3 starships which are attending the inauguration on Altair. It's presumed that all 3 starships, one of which I assume is the Enterprise, are a similar class, that is a main capital ship. Kirk. No, it's not. I know the Altair situation. We would be one of 3 starships. Very impressive, very diplomatic, but it's simply not that vital. We discover the Vulcan mating urges are so strong that they can kill a Vulcan. Later we discover this could be a reason why the Vulcans didn't create a large, wide-spanning kingdom or empire. McCoy. Well, it's nothing I can pinpoint without an examination, but he's becoming increasingly restive. If he were not a Vulcan, I'd almost stay nervous. And for another thing, he's avoiding food. I checked and he hasn't eaten at all in 3 days. McCoy later states, there's a growing imbalance of bodily functions, as if in our bodies huge amounts of adrenaline were constantly being pumped into our bloodstream. Now I can't trace it down in my biocom. Spock won't tell me what it is, but if it isn't stopped somehow, the physical and emotional pressure will simply kill him. The second piece to the puzzle, apparently Vulcans must return to their own planets to mate, or possibly to the planet that they were born on, which in some ways is the same thing, or could be the same thing. This could explain why they have not created a large empire. When under its influences, that is their mating influences, they lose all control and, as we've discovered, can actually die. Spock. No, it's not. We shield it with ritual and customs, shrouded in antiquity. You humans have no concept. It strips our minds from us. It brings a madness which rips away our veneer of civilization. It is the pon farr, the time of mating. There are precedents in nature, Captain, the giant eelbirds of Regulus 5. Once each 11 years they must return to the caverns where they were hatched. On your Earth, the salmon. They must return to that one stream where they were born, to spawn or die in trying. Kirk replies, but you're not a fish, Mr. Spock. Spock interrupts. Nor am I a man. I am Vulcan. I've hoped I could be spared this, but the ancient drives are too strong. Eventually they catch up with us, and we are driven by forces we cannot control to return home and take a wife or die. Well, one thing that we discover is Spock considers Kirk his best friend, and Bones also in this group of his closest friends. Good thing he asked Bones down to the planet, otherwise it would have been a little bit nasty. Spock. It is my right. By tradition, the male is accompanied by his closest friends. Kirk. Thank you, Mr. Spock. Spock. I also request Mr. McCoy to accompany me. As the Enterprise travels towards Vulcan or approaches Vulcan, we discover that Vulcan has a space central. Not sure if it's military or a civilian organisation, but considering the Enterprise has to take its direction, I suspect it's a combination of both. Kirk, open the channel, Lieutenant. Vulcan Space Central. This is the USS Enterprise requesting permission to assume standard orbit. Vulcan. USS Enterprise from Vulcan Space Central, permission granted, and from all a Vulcan, welcome. Is Commander Spock with you? We discover Spock has a wife, or at least a promised wife. Considering he had a fling with an Earth woman on an earlier episode, Spock is not very faithful. Good thing they did not marry in the end. T'Pring, on view screen. Spock, it is I, Spock. T'Pring, parted for me and never parted, never and always touching and touched, we meet at the appointed place. T'Pring, on view screen. Spock, parted from me and never parted, never and always touched and touching, I await you. Uhuru, she's lovely, Mr. Spock. Who is she? Spock replies, she is T'Pring, my wife. It looks like Spock's family is not just a normal middle-class family. Spock's family held a reasonably large piece of land for over 2,000 years, which may be a reflection of their longevity or of the high status of Spock's family. I suspect a combination of both. Spock, this is the land of my family, has been held by us for more than 2,000 Earth years. This is our place of Kun Ut Kal Ifi. McCoy, he called it Kun Ut what? Kirk, he described it to me as meaning a marriage or challenge. In the distance past, Vulcans killed to win their mates. McCoy, and they still go mad at this time, perhaps the price they pay for having no emotion the rest of the time. We discover that Spock's wife was selected by his parents, and obviously T'Pring's parents as well. Arranged marriage. Kirk, marriage party? You said T'Pring was your wife. Spock, by our parents' arrangements. A ceremony while we were 7 years of age, less than a marriage but more than a betrothal. One touches the other in order to feel each other's thoughts. In this way our minds are locked together, so at the proper time we would both be drawn to Kun Ut Kal Ifi. Another proof point that Spock's family is indeed very important and powerful, as it includes a very important Vulcan. Someone who turned down a seat on the Federation Council, no less. Makes you wonder what the Federation Council is. Perhaps it's like the English House of Lords. This does not sound like any election, or it does not sound any election would have been held. On the other hand, perhaps it's a special position which can be bestowed on people for some reason. Again, like the modern English House of Lords. Kirk, Bones, you know who that is? T'Par, the only person to ever turn down a seat on the Federation Council. McCoy, T'Par, officiating at Spock's wedding. Kirk, he never mentioned that his family was this important. In conclusion, we discover the name of a planet, in this case Altair 6, which is probably an alien planet on the periphery of the Federation. Its shore facilities are excellent. There has been some kind of war in the Altair system, which an inauguration is supposed to result in peace or stabilisation. Clearly there's more than one inhabited system or planet within that solar system. The Klingons are involved, which is rather odd, as it's likely Vulcan is on the other side of Earth. On the other hand, there is no reason why the Klingons would not benefit from a conflict on the other side of the Federation, which may likely involve Federation planets. There are a lot of questions concerning Altair 6, and unfortunately few answers. Starfleet sees fit to send 3 starships to Altair 6 for the inauguration, one of which is the Enterprise. This represents probably 25% of the entire Federation capital ship fleet, which indicates the starships are scattered around Federation space quite thinly. Vulcan is on the way to Altair 6, and the deviation costs 2 to 3 days. As Altair 6 is probably on the periphery of the Federation and Vulcan closer to Earth, this makes sense. If only I knew where Altair 6 was, we could pin down Vulcan for certain. My basic theory is Vulcan is on the opposite point from the Romulans, which means that Altair 6 is way at the opposite end of Federation space compared to where the Enterprise was wandering around in Season 1. On the other hand, in an earlier season, the Enterprise talks of Starbase 12, which is, again, a starbase on the side of the Federation, which faces the Klingons and Romulans. Anyway, I need to think about these locations in a little bit more detail to see if there's some kind of logical explanation for all these weird changes. We discover the Vulcan mating urge is insanely strong and has a significant effect on the health of Vulcan. It seems the logic of the Vulcans is countered by insanely strong mating urges. Spock considers Kirk and McCoy as his closest friends. Vulcan has a Vulcan Space Central. This could be a control tower or organisation, or could represent its fleet. We know the Vulcan starships are the same as the Enterprise, which is something we discover later, but perhaps the Vulcans also have uniquely Vulcan ships which stay in their own system. Spock has a wife, or had a wife, who is called T'Pring. Spock's family has held the same land for over 2,000 years, which means the land becomes Spock's family land in, let's say, 264 AD. That's where the land was, first owned by Spock's family, if not earlier. Vulcans' mates are selected when they are 7 years old, when they engage in a mind touch. I assume this occurs with all Vulcans. There is a Federation Council, which has Vulcans as members of it. I assume the Council is a type of Senate, where all full members have a seat. As indicated earlier, it's likely each semi-independent Earth planet has a seat, such as Mars as Alpha 3, at least, as well as any alien planet. It's interesting that the Vulcan seat didn't seem to involve any elections, so maybe they're parcelled out, who knows. The Doomsday Machine is the 6th episode of the 2nd season. It was the 35th episode produced. Its stardate is 4202.9 and its original air date was the 20th of October 1967. We are provided the name of another starship. If the Intrepid, which we discovered earlier, is a starship of the same class as the Enterprise, we have identified 3 of the 12 Constellation class starships names. Palmer, negative. It was so badly garbled all we got was the name, Constellation, then we lost it. Kirk, every solar system in the sector blasted to rubble and still no sight of the Constellation. Matt Decker in command, what could have happened to him? Kirk, it's the Constellation, look at that. Spock, she may have been wrecked by whatever destroyed these solar systems. We discover a system L370, which did contain inhabitable planets, but we are uncertain if anyone was on them. Regardless, the whole system is now destroyed, or at least the planets are. Sulu, sir, we're now within the limits of system L370, but I can't seem to locate. Spock, Captain, sensors show this entire solar system has been destroyed. Nothing left but rubble and asteroids. Kirk, but that's incredible. The star in this system is still intact. Only a nova could destroy like that. Spock, nonetheless, Captain, sensors show nothing but debris where we charted 7 planets last year. We are given the name of another system, in this case L374. It contains at least 1 habitable planet, but we are uncertain if there was anyone on it apart from the crew of the starship. If anyone was on it when it was destroyed, then they're all dead now because the system is entirely destroyed as the last one. Sulu, entering limits of system L374, sir. Shown us the same evidence of destruction. Captain's log, stardate 4202.1. Exceptionally heavy subspace interference still prevents our contacting Starfleet to inform them of the destroyed solar systems we have encountered. We are now entering system L374. Science Officer Masada reports the 4th planet seems to be breaking up. We are going to investigate. We discovered that there is an automated robot weapon capable of breaking up planets and then consuming them, and that it has entered the galaxy, apparently from another galaxy, possibly Andromeda because that's the closest one, although there are a bunch of smaller globular galaxies that are floating a little bit closer, perhaps it's from that. Well, it's miles long with a maw that could swallow a dozen starship. It destroys planets, chops them up into rubble. She was attacked by what appeared to be essentially a robot, an automated weapon of immense size and power. Its apparent function is to smash planets to rubble and then digest the debris for fuel. It is therefore self-sustaining as long as there are planetary bodies for it to feed on. Spock, unknown, Captain. However, Mr. Sulu has computed the path of the machine, using the destroyed solar system as a base course. Projecting back on our star charts, we find that it came from outside, from another galaxy. Spock, appropriate, Captain. However, I can't help wondering if there are more of those weapons wandering around the universe. We are told the population of the Rigel system, or perhaps the Rigel planet, is in the millions. Decker, we can't let that reach Rigel. Why, millions of innocent people would die. Spock, I'm aware of the Rigel system's population, Commodore, but we are only one ship. Our deflector shields are strained, our subspace transmission is useless. Logically, our primary duty is to survive in order to warn Starfleet Command. In conclusion, we are given the name of another starship, in this case Constellation. It appears to be a sister ship of the Enterprise, and if the Intrepid, which we discovered earlier, was also a sister ship, we have the names of 3 of the major starships of the Enterprise, or the Federation. We are told of 2 systems now destroyed which contained some habitable planets. It's unknown if there was anyone on any of these planets, but it's likely, apart from the crew of the Constellation. The episode gives us information about an automated Doomsday Machine which destroys planets. It comes from another galaxy, but we do not have any information about the aliens which created it. Presumably they were eliminated, otherwise why would they allow such a valuable military asset to travel to another galaxy? The only real significant point from this is that there may be other Doomsday Machines floating around. We know that the Federation, we assume that it's a Federation planet, Rigel, has a population of millions. We have previously identified a Rigel 12, which is a mining planet, Rigel 2, which is a human non-colony planet, Rigel 7, which is an alien planet. I have to assume this is another Rigel and it's in a different system to the others. So in this case, possibly each Rigel is actually a totally different sun. Anyway, another area that probably we'll never get a definitive answer on, but if we just assume they're systems and not worry too much about, or planets and not worry too much about where the systems are, I think we won't go astray. We come to the end of my first analysis of Season 2 episodes, that is the first 6 episodes of Season 2. The episode scripts can be found on the URL shown or in the comments. It becomes obvious that many of the later Star Trek movies and shows do not align with the original vision of the series. This is common in real history as later historians attempt to change the past to justify their beliefs in the present. Live long and prosper, fellow Trekkies.